Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I would like to continue talking about my current project of coding a game of managing a football team in a fantasy world. And more specifically, I'd like to talk about a document where I've jotted down my ideas for what different attributes might do, very briefly. My idea for this game is that the player character and also all of the non-player characters will have attributes in the same way that a role-playing game character typically has attributes. So what I did is I started by noting down the more common attributes based on my experience of tabletop and computer role-playing games, and I got the following: strength, intelligence, luck. That's not as common, but I do like to have a luck stat. Constitution, dexterity, agility. Often you find that dexterity and agility are treated as the one. There's a single attribute that covers most of them. Certainly in Dungeons and Dragons, dexterity covers both dexterity and agility. But I generally like to separate them. And it seems to me that in a simulation of sort of very physical thing, in a simulation of sport, it seems like differences between whether you can pick up the ball and sort of pass well, which seems like a dexterity thing, that does seem separate to whether you can sort of, dodge well, whether you're agile. So I decided to write them down as separate things. Charisma, willpower. Now this one's size, this is far from common. In fact, I only know of one system which uses it, which is, or at least I only know of one system which has it as an attribute. There's often some sort of way of recording that a particular character is of larger or smaller size, but having an attribute like size in the same way that you have charisma or strength or dexterity, there's only one system that I know of that does that, and that is the basic role-playing system, which is the one which includes RuneQuest. But I put it down because I quite like having size as an attribute. And one of the reasons I like it is that it's easy to make it, as it is in basic role-playing, to make it sort of double-sided, so that a large size is not necessarily better than a small size. It's just that a large size allows you to do particular things, and a small size allows you to do particular things. And that seems to relate to the setting or idea that I have for this game, because if you are large, it seems logical that you would find it easier to block opposing players. But if you're small, it seems like you would find it easier to sort of dodge around other players, run under their legs or whatever if they're a lot larger than you. There's also some sort of more comedy possibilities. In Blood Bowl, they have a concept called throw teammate, where a very some of the very large players like trolls can throw some of the very small players like goblins. So sometimes you get a goblin will pick up the ball, sort of run next to a troll, and then the troll will sort of throw them down the field. And so, I mean, that's a bit down the road, but that sort of thing I think would be quite fun to have in my game. Maybe, large players hiding small ones in their pocket or something like that, trying to sneak extra players on the field, something like that. But anyway, these are the ones. So yeah, most of these are pretty common, not necessarily under those names. I know in Dungeons and Dragons, wisdom is used for willpower, which is not really what wisdom means, but it's just sort of over the years it's come to be used for that. I think mostly because people didn't really know what wisdom was separate to intelligence, and willpower was a sort of obvious thing that you would want to simulate for a fantasy role-playing game, and there wasn't an attribute for it. So they sort of got slotted together. But often there's some sort of way of measuring willpower, although sometimes it's sort of rolled into intelligence as well, or you might have some sort of mind attribute, and that covers both willpower and intelligence. But I've separated them for now. So I made a list of sort of attributes that I wouldn't mind using, and then I thought about what could each attribute do, and I tried to come up with at least one idea for each attribute in the context of what we're doing, which is a sort of fantasy themed football game. And so I'll just go through those. So strength, obviously you could use strength for sort of punching people and stuff. I'm not sure how violent I want the game to be. Like, is it sort of just like a normal football game with maybe slightly more kind of comedy aspects, or is it a full-on sort of gladiatorial thing where people are being knocked out? Like Blood Bowl is the fictional game is meant to be very violent. It's possible, it's quite normal for players to be knocked out, and not unusual for them to be sort of get permanent injuries or even die. And I'm not sure how much of that I want. But certainly strength could be used for combat. But for specific sort of football things, I guess, I thought it could be used to see if passes or kicks were long enough as opposed to being accurate enough. But if you're making a long pass, you might need to roll to see if you've got the strength to sort of to do it at short notice. And also being used to stiff arm tacklers. Intelligence, I had a couple of different ideas, rolling to see if the ball carrier does the smart thing. So once someone catches the ball, what are they going to do? Are they going to run in the wrong direction? Are they going to just stand there? Are they going to run by themselves, or are they going to run sort of in a more intelligent way with other players protecting them? Well, maybe intelligence is the stat that determines what happens there. Second idea, we could have special plays which unlock during the game and require an intelligence roll to use. So the idea there was that you might have wandering sages coming along and saying, well, a wandering sage comes along and he offers to show you the special play for such and such gold pieces. And if you agree, you've got the special play, and then trying to get the players to use it might depend on their intelligence. Different species reluctant to pass to each other. Intelligence of passer overcomes this. So I had the idea, this is an idea that I did actually steal from Blood Bowl. I'm not doing Blood Bowl. I'm not doing a copy of Blood Bowl. It's not going to be a board game like Blood Bowl. But there are specific ideas that I quite like from the game. And one of them is this idea that if you have a mixed species team, orcs are sort of reluctant to pass to goblins and vice versa. And I thought the intelligence of the passer might be the attribute that's related to that. Luck makes you more likely to win the coin toss at the start of games, and it could also affect random events such as weather. There's quite a lot of random events that can happen to you, as remembering that you, the player character, are not just a player and not just a captain. You're also meant to be analogous to the coach and sort of the owner of the team and so on. And so you're making all these different decisions. And there's a lot of random events that could come up. There's, rot in the seats or something, and like there's bad random events and good random events, and it's easy to see how luck could affect that. Constitution, I just said less likely to become exhausted in the second half of games. This seems to be quite common across all codes of football. That there's at least two halves. There's a certain amount of play, then there's a break, and then there's more play. I know in some, I think in American football there's like quarters, isn't there? There's more breaks, but in all codes I think there's at least two halves. And that seems like a good opportunity for more long-term events like, well, what happens in the second half? Is this player really good in the first half, but then he gets worn out and all of his attributes go down, or even that he can't continue? Well, Constitution might cover that. Dexterity, this one's pretty easy. Catching and picking up the ball and passing, both making and receiving, meaning both making a pass and receiving a pass. Anything you do with your hands is dexterity, obviously. Agility, I thought that would affect dodging and possibly blocking. Charisma, I've got 3 points here. Fans will be more forgiving. So part of this game must be economic. Are the fans turning up? Are they what's the word? Do they desert you when you lose, sort of thing? Well, charisma might affect that. 2 could also affect despair at half time. I'll get back to what I mean by that once I read the third one, sorry. Different species reluctant to pass to each other. Charisma of recipient overcomes this. So in other words, when you have 2 different species and one's thinking about whether to pass to the other, it's the charisma of the recipient and the intelligence of the passer that determine whether that happens, or whether they just, no, I'm not giving it to a bloody elf, and they hold on to the ball, and obviously that hurts you somehow. So what do I mean by despair at half time? Well, I thought that it might be that if a team is losing at half time, they just sort of collapse in the second half. They lose heart, and we don't, because remember, we're not going to be, you won't get a report of the entire game. You will just get sort of highlights of what happens. Maybe you'll make a couple of choices throughout the game, but it certainly won't be a sort of play-by-play simulation of the game. And one of the things that might happen is, well, you're behind at half time, or the other team just sort of gives up and you win the game. And the charisma of the captain, sorry, I'm highlighting the wrong bit. The charisma of the captain is probably going to be a factor in that, right? Are they going to listen to their inspiring speech and be inspired and fight back, or are they, going to go and just give up? Well, charisma might depend on that. Then we have willpower, less likely to despair at half time if losing. Well, this is the same concept. There's a lot of other things that can happen with willpower, but I haven't listed them. More sort of fantasy-ish stuff, like some monsters might be sort of frightening, like some more outlandish creatures might be frightening. Magic, often willpower is the defense against magic. Sometimes it's the fuel for magic as well. You sort of lose willpower to cast spells. Even if that's not true, sometimes willpower is what you rely on to resist at least sort of mental effects, like being hypnotized or being, mind controlled by magic, that sort of thing. But in terms of just a football game, which is what I'm looking at now, it seems like, it's sort of carrying on and not despairing. Maybe not quitting the team as well, because of course that could happen to a real life sports team. If all of your guys quit, you don't have a team, sort of thing. And higher willpower players might be sort of more likely to stick with the team. And finally, size. And my idea was that, I think I mentioned this before, but large size means it's easier to block, and small size means it's easier to dodge past. So small size is sort of a good for attacking, I guess, and large size is good for defense. And that is what I got, just in a sort of quick, a quick brainstorm. I'll upload a version of this document to itch.io if anyone's interested. It's in Open Office. I might put it in a more widely used format to make it easier if anyone wants to look at this. But that's my idea. I'm planning to do, because this is a sort of, this is a game that it's like a combination of different types of games that aren't often combined. And so it's not like doing, oh, let's just do a dungeon crawl, or let's just do a, let's adapt an existing board game or something like that. And as a result of that, I'm a little bit more uncertain about how to start. And as a result of that, I'm probably going to spend a bit more time writing documents like this before I start actually programming, like thinking about design before I start actually programming. What I want to talk about next video is probably the a rock, paper, scissors mechanic. And what I mean by that is a mechanic to have different types of teams be good against different types of teams, so that there's not a single best type of team that beats everything, which of course is no fun at all. But I'll leave it there for now. I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.